Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Akasha Circe. And as you may already know from watching the Alchemizing Your Awareness in Asana series, I am a healer, a coach, a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, facilitator of workshops, teacher training, lead trainer, and so much more. And I really love providing tangible tools for shifting awareness, really helping people awaken to new layers, levels, and dimensions of their human experience, really embodying your divinity in your humanity. And this week, in this series, we have really been talking about how to move from this idea of just being the three-dimensional body to moving into the energetic expression, right? Where we go from this idea of doing the pose to being the pose. And today is the last day of the series, and there's been more videos added today inside of the playlist, so be sure to check that out. The thing that I wanted to share with you today is about final resting pose or Shavasana, corpse pose, integration. That's really what this is about. And I have a couple of quotes. I have quite a few things that I want to read, but the thing that I want you to know about Shavasana is that it's necessary. And I used to own a yoga center, and it used to blow my mind when people would want to skip Shavasana because they just are really missing out on this space that is really allowing the integrative aspect of the practice to occur. So I want to read you the quotes. I want to talk a little bit about this integrative aspect, and then how I was taught Shavasana from, the Iyengar lineage, how we do Shavasana now, and how you can cultivate this into a daily practice for yourself. So in final resting pose, there's in verse 2 in the second chapter of the Garanda Samhita, there's a quote that I'm pulling out here, and it's lying flat on the ground on one's back like a corpse is called mritsana. This posture destroys fatigue and quiets the agitation of the mind, destroys fatigue and quiets the agitation of the mind. And then another quote that I have for you here is from a quote from my teacher's book, The Path to Holistic Healing. It's on page 179. And if you suffer from stress, you may experience indigestion, IBS, headaches, migraine, a feeling of constriction in the diaphragm, breathlessness, or insomnia. Yogic methods of deep relaxation have a profound effect on all the body systems. When a part of the body is tense, blood flow to that area decreases, reducing immunity. Yoga works on that area to relieve tension and improve blood flow to the entire body, stabilizing the heart rate and the blood pressure. Rapid, shallow breathing becomes deep and slow, allowing a higher intake of oxygen and removing stress from the body and mind. And then last quote that I want to read is from Dr. Carla Manley. And she's a clinical psychologist as well as a yoga and meditation instructor. And your body does not differentiate between stress from running from a tiger, having a long day at work, or a run at the park. Exercise puts us in that fight or flight state. Those situations trigger the body to flood itself with adrenaline and cortisol. The body shuts down all but its critical functions. Taking a rest post-workout counteracts those stress responses in the body. So this idea of relaxation is our way of coming back into a healthy, functioning body and mind. And the energy of relaxation is expansive. It's not local, it's global. And that's really something that when you have a relaxation response in your body, you don't just have a relaxation response in your right arm or in your left arm or in your right leg, right? You have this relaxation response globally, or the immune response globally. And I think that this is something that people really underestimate when we go do a power vinyasa class, or when we go do a Bikram class, or we go do an intense heated vinyasa class, or a 2-hour workshop on arm balances or inversions, is that that is putting you in a stress response, and you need to integrate. So let's talk about this word integrate. Literally, your body is having a cascade of auto-populated responses based on the mental, physical, and emotional request of your body's experience in the flow or in the asana practice. And this space of lying down and going still in the physical body is a way to anchor the mind to say, we're safe. We don't need this fight or flight response. We need to integrate this information and dump what no longer serves us. We need to release or let go of, right? What's no longer of service to us. This idea of integration is really important, and it's something that I see happen a lot. And I'm going to give you an example of one of the greatest ways I can explain this that a lot of us are often really familiar with, which is you go and you get a training in one thing, and instead of practicing that training information in your own experience, you just start regurgitating the information, but you haven't lived it. So you've gotten the information, and now you're just sticking the information back out into the world, kind of like a puppet. So what it means is that there's no cellular integration in your own experience, which allows you to authentically birth that out so that it isn't this stream of flow, but instead it's an embodiment and then an offering. So I see this a lot in the education system where it's just like certification after certification after certification after certification. But if you ask them 5 certifications down the row what the first certification was about, a lot of times they can't remember. Or they're like, it doesn't matter. I got it done. Box checked. I dotted, T crossed. And, this is kind of the problem with like trying to keep up. And this is what happens if we keep bombarding ourselves with physicality and we don't take the time in stillness to integrate it. Everything just keeps getting agitated, right? Which is why I love that part 2, verse 2, or chapter 2, second verse of the Garanda Samhita, which is lying flat on the ground on one's back like a corpse. This posture destroys fatigue and quiets the agitation of the mind. So the mind can be another way for us to say the nervous system. As I mentioned in another video, over 6,000 miles of nerves in your body. So if agitation, this is also called trauma stacking. If you're familiar with that language, if you study any psychology or do any type of therapy, trauma stacking is when traumas build on top of one another, but they're never processed. So by the time you go to therapy, there's 10 traumas to navigate whatever the current response is. So if you're having anxiety, it's like you can't just go to the thing that's causing you anxiety in your life right now because there's all these other layers of trauma. That's trauma stacking. So the same thing is what's happening to our nervous system. If we're navigating our world and we're never actually taking time to decompress the nervous system, we're never actually taking time to let things go, process things through the parasympathetic nervous system, which I mentioned yesterday in the breath video, then you're going to realize that all of that stress is now just stacked upon the other. And this is what is known from hormone therapy, from like endocrinologists when people have adrenal fatigue or they start having thyroid issues. This is really what adrenal fatigue burnout is about. It's because there was never this place of being in the rest and digest. And so it's literally your body is burning itself up. So if you think about that from your wiring system, which is your nervous system, think about that like a house. And something, let's say lightning hits the fuse box and all that energy is channeled through the conduit of electricity, AKA the nervous system in the house. This is what stress is like to the physical body, right? So I could clearly talk about this forever. I'm very passionate about it because it's something that as someone who holds space for other people's transformation, it's something that blows my mind a little bit that you don't have time to relax. Or there's this statement in the world, "I'll relax when I'm dead." It's like the more time you take, the more time you make. And that's really quite a fascinating little oxymoron inside of the linear conceptualization of time. But if you understand that you give yourself time, when you start coming back into the world and you start engaging, you will be so much more efficient, so much more effective, and so much more present in a grounded way, which allows you to take effective action. So when I was learning Shavasana, it was 15 to 30 minutes. And on average, most of the Shavasana experiences that I had at the end of alignment classes were 20 minutes. And often we were taught in the Iyengar lineage that there's really three stages to Shavasana. So that made me want to go and look at one of Guruji's books. And, this was, if you don't have this book, it's such a great book. It's Light on Yoga by BKS Iyengar. This was like the first yoga book. I've had this same one since I bought it at the bookstore 20 something years ago. Yeah, crazy. So here, that same quote that I read from the Samhita is in here. But also what I love is that this statement here, it's on page 423 in my copy, and it says, "In good relaxation, one feels energy flow from the back of the head toward the heels and not the other way around. One also feels as if though the body is elongated." That elongated sensation means that the body actually relaxed. The tension down to the bone has been released. So the energy is not flowing from the heels up, it's flowing from the back of the head down. And so I love that I'm ending with this inside of this series because this is really speaking to the alchemy of your awareness inside of asana. When you start understanding how energy flows inside of these postures, you no longer have to go outside of yourself and say, "Hey, am I doing this right?" Because you understand how the energy is or is not flowing. And this is really transformational. It's how you become the alchemist, how you shift base consciousness of where you are or where you perceive yourself to be, which is really what I'm here to help people do, is to not hold themselves back based on where they perceive themselves to be, but to reflect where they are and how they can get to where they're going. So when we would practice Shavasana, there were 3 stages. The first stage was the first 15 minutes was just letting the body relax, and often it can take 10 to 15 minutes for most people to settle in, right? And the way you can always tell this is the breath, because the breath in Shavasana, when you are really in it, it's very delicate, or my teacher has always said the word fine. It's very fine, like a thin golden strand, because it connects to everything, right? Once you get into that space of relaxation and the breath is smooth and fine, then Shavasana begins. For a lot of people, that's a 10 to 15-minute window. Then we start Shavasana, which is why a lot of my classes and my teachers, they always had 20-minute Shavasanas because it takes you that while to just like settle in. And it's that moment when the ego and the mind kind of go quiet. The ahamkara, if you know this word, aham, I am. So this is the space of the ego. When that ahamkara goes silent, that's Shavasana. That's when you've stepped into not only this idea of presence, but that's also death because there's no longer the egoic control. And then when you come out of that experience, that's the moment of rebirth. And I believe that's the fourth stage of Shavasana, is coming out of Shavasana, releasing even that temporary death and coming back into the space of bringing only that which serves you, letting go of all else. And I really would love for you, if this is something that feels like it's really resonating for you, I would love for you to try to just practice Shavasana as its own thing. Just 20 minutes Shavasana. You just lie flat, focus on the breath, smooth, steady, and fine, or my word for it is delicate. My teacher's words for it were always fine. And really allow yourself to have this experience of merging with the one, right? And this is hard for a lot of people because Shavasana is the act of non doing. And in a world that prides its value on productivity, this is counter culture. And what I want to share with you here is Shavasana is the gate of the more, if you're familiar with the 8 limbs of yoga, most likely if you're watching this, right? And Shavasana is the gateway to those more internal limbs of yoga. And those are pranayama, so the breath, pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses. We close our eyes, right? We go into stillness. Dharana, which is concentration. And then dhyana, concentration becomes meditation. And when your Shavasana practice is regular and you can go into pranayama very deeply and easily, it's just going to be a breath exercise. And I think that this is where a lot of people get confused because I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. A lot of times we say this because as yoga teachers, we have 60-minute or 75-minute classes and we only have 5 minutes for Shavasana, 10 minutes for Shavasana. If you have an active mind, say, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. A true Shavasana, there's none of that. You merge into shunya or the void, right? Where all is and where is all, right? The all, if you're familiar with the Hermetic principles and the Kabbalion. And this deep relaxation is by far one of the healthiest things that we can do because it's tapping us into the parasympathetic nervous system. This is that rest and digest. This is what meditation is bringing us. So if you can spend 20 minutes a day for 5 days in a row, just having a Shavasana experience, I promise you that week will feel different than the one before. And if you don't do Shavasana after that, it's going to feel different than the week after that. But holding this space for you to integrate, that is the purpose of Shavasana. We do the yoga poses. Our body has that stress response to the asana, and then we rest and reside in stillness so that we can integrate all of that on a cellular level. And on a cellular level, let go of what no longer serves us. So from the micro to the macro, macro to micro. As above, so below, as below, so above. I've really enjoyed hosting this series here on YouTube. I'm really grateful for everyone that's been sending me messages. I really would love for you to reach out if there's something you want more information on. Of course, I'm always looking for ideas. But the thing that I want to leave you with here is that stress disturbs digestion, it limits our circulation, it raises blood pressure, disturbs the proper functioning of all body systems in so many ways that there's no way I could list them all in the next couple of minutes. The thing to know is that just practicing Shavasana on its own daily can counteract all of those things I just said and even more. So I'm really hoping that you will take some time to hold space for yourself. Try Shavasana simply in a reclined position. You can do it on the floor. You can do it outside on a blanket. You can do it on your bed. You can do it on the sofa. in a reclined position, no effort in the body. Set yourself a timer for 15 minutes and just be still. And as soon as the mind starts to think, this is always the question. As soon as the mind has gone off on a tangent and you realize that, you can simply come back, take a breath, and as you exhale all the breath out, pause and just hold. Then you'll inhale, breath in, breath out, pause, hold. Every time you do this at the bottom of the breath, it'll keep your mind relaxed. Because when we can eliminate the agitation of the mind, we become the creator of all that we desire. And this is how we take our life and we turn it into gold. This is how we become the alchemist. So thank you again so much for joining me for this series, Alchemizing Your Awareness in Asana. And I'll be sure to be doing another one of these series coming up in the next 10 days. So be sure to also get on my email list. There'll be a link underneath the video, and I'll see you back here soon. In the meantime, thanks again for your support and stay illuminated. Bye now.